Welcome to the continuing education module entitled Creating a Wellness-Oriented Work Culture, Strategies and Dynamics Over Time. The agenda for this particular module includes the following topics: what to tell management about a culture of wellness, why is culture so important, a desired cultural endpoint, what does it take to create culture, and specifically we're going to look at four major components: leadership support, environmental support, policy and benefit support, and communication support. We're also going to look at the role of cultural alignment and the key tools for this process to take place. And finally, a summary of key points. Now, I'd like to ask you a question. If you were in a situation where your CEO says to you over coffee, tell me how I should make our organizational culture more wellness oriented, it'd be a tremendous opportunity, and the issue would be, what would you say about this? Go ahead and pause the video and then write out some rough notes of what you'd say in response to this type of question. And in a moment, come back on again and I'll tell you what I would say in answer to that question. The answer that I would give is the CEO would probably be something like, it takes a number of things to create a culture. And if we think about four, almost like a table, when you build a table, you need to have four strong legs. And the four legs that go and contribute to cultural creation and cultural change are leadership support, and it has a number of elements; environmental change, that has a number of elements, it's environmental support; policy and benefits support; and communication support. And I would then unload as much or unpack as much as the individual CEO that I'm talking to has an appetite for. I try to stay very sensitive to any cues that would cause me to think that this individual is perhaps getting too much information from me. But that's how I would start this discussion. Now, why culture is so important? If we look at why people don't change, oftentimes there are reasons they give us, which may in fact not necessarily be the real reasons, but are the socially accepted reasons. I'm too busy, I'm confused about my health, I'm afraid, oops, I forgot about these issues, I don't really care, it doesn't make any difference to me, I don't understand it, I can't afford it. So those are oftentimes the reasons why people tell us that they don't do wellness. And the issue around culture is, if you have not developed cultural solutions to each of these reasons for people not to engage in a specific wellness behavior, then we're leaving the people we're trying to serve without adequate solutions and without adequate ways of addressing their reasons for not changing. Now, when we talk about creation of a wellness-oriented work culture, I'd like to suggest that the objective or the goal that you work on in your own setting is to create, in your own words, something like this statement for your own organization. We want our work culture to help every worker or employee or associate, whatever the terminology you use, and each of their family members to achieve a high level of personal wellness and well-being. So if that becomes your vision statement for how you go about creating that work culture, that's a good starting place for you. Now, what does it take to create a culture of wellness? Let's go through the four things that we talked about when we addressed this issue and the question that your CEO might ask you. First of all, leadership support has some key elements. It means that your senior management team is on board, It means any mid-level managers are also supportive and understand the need for the program, the rationale, the value proposition. It also means your first line supervisors do in fact support it when employees come to them for permission to attend a wellness program activity or engage in wellness activities. And it also involves the employee leadership side. So not just the management leadership support, but also employees having an opportunity to perhaps be on an advisory committee, to be involved in some of the program's implementation, to be in a subcommittee that's working on a specific area, and or be in a formal role of a wellness ambassador, a wellness champion, or a wellness rep for their organization. So that's our whole area of leadership support. The second area is our environmental support, and that means essentially the physical space that I work in tells me something about its value for wellness. So I need to see cues in my environment that have to do with wellness. In addition, I need to have any barriers to my pursuit of wellness-related activities, like physical activity or like eating in a more healthy pattern or handling stress more appropriately, whatever the wellness issue, I need to have any barriers to my performing those particular activities removed. So it's creating a barrier-free environment around wellness. In the policy and benefits support area, it's primarily the HR and benefits policies and how they align with wellness, how they mention it or reinforce it or provide reference to it. It's also the existence of some financial wellness incentives. And this goes back to our dilemma that only about 20% of most work populations are intrinsically motivated for wellness. So if we want to appeal to the other 80%, we oftentimes have to use a financial wellness incentive. And it makes a lot of sense for us to actually charge less for our health plans to those who are actively engaged in our wellness program. So that's the method that I've found leads to the best health improvements, but also the largest degree of engagement that you can achieve with a given population. We also have the employee handbook, which is oftentimes a reference point for how our employees look at the policies that affect their behavior. So I want wellness to be well integrated into that employee handbook. And the last of the four legs of the table, if you will, are the communication support. And communication support means regular communications that remind me as an employee of my employer's position on wellness, their perception about its value, the significance they put up on it, the value proposition that is connected to it. It also means there needs to be some regular pronouncements where people are in fact making statements about wellness from the various managerial levels and the managerial positions and their authority. It's reinforcing the formal values that are expressed as part of those pronouncements. Now, let's look at each one of the four areas. Let's start with leadership support. And my experience leads me to tell you that if your senior management and your mid-level managers and first-line supervisors have a sincere belief in the value of the wellness program, they will generally do more to support engagement, involvement, and participation on the part of the rank and file employee. At the same time, they also need to be personally participating on a journey of wellness. So that means it will work better if they are also working on their own wellness and using the various interventions that your program offers. There's also a degree of something that's been happening over the last decade or so, which is what I would call vendorization of our wellness efforts. And it's where the employer essentially says to some outside vendor, you put the program together, it's your program, then come and do it on us. It's not perceived as being a sense of ownership on the part of the employer, and particularly management, senior management. They don't see it as their program, it's really the vendor's program. And I think that unfortunately has led to some real plateauing in what we see happening in wellness in the employer community. So one of the leadership support issues I believe that's important for us to deal with is having your senior management and your various mid-level and first-line supervisors actually feel a sense of ownership over the program. I'd probably go so far as to say your employees should feel a sense of ownership as well. In addition, there's the leadership support needs to be able to actively support a release for access to programming. So if employees need to have some work time to do wellness, there needs to be not a grudging release, but a welcome or encouraging release. There's also the issue of, does that manager actually pursue some sort of exemplar behavior? Are they in fact trying to do this in a way that is showing their level of commitment and support? Also, whether that leadership includes wellness in any kind of performance review process or performance appraisal process, or would they provide feedback in a 360 to the people in their sphere of influence. So that's a performance and wellness as a performance issue. Also, do they communicate regularly about it? Is there some sort of regular mention of it or a regular consideration of it? Also, are they sensitive to the effects? Sometimes work demands are extraordinary. So being able to recognize these are extraordinary demands, but we also want to be able to have people, achieve some level of work-life balance. We want their well-being to be maintained, even though we have some unique kinds of opportunities that we oftentimes confront in the business world. So that's sensitive to effects. And recommend involvement so that they are, for the people that are in their direct report line, they in fact are recommending their involvement in the program. And they are supportive of integrating wellness into the various dimensions of work activity. So that's another characteristic that goes along with successful leadership support. And that they take a consistent position on wellness and well-being, that their position doesn't vary tremendously, but it is in fact consistent and communicates a consistent posture. And finally, they encourage and allow employee involvement in the program. So the ability for us to involve employees as advisors, sometimes as implementers, sometimes as communicators, sometimes as advocates, sometimes as people who are picking up feedback and feeding it back to program staff. So there's a variety of different ways in which employees can be involved in programs. So this is the context of that one of the four legs of the table that is the leadership support. Environmental support brings us to a number of different things that are observable on a walkthrough, what we call a wellness walkthrough, where you actually look through a facility and see what are the physical cues that wellness is an important issue for that organization. And at times, an on-site fitness facility communicates that. Shower facilities for employees that allow them to be able to exercise and have a shower during the day. Bike racks, the ability to have walking trails, healthy food options in terms of cafeteria or vending trucks, or however food is distributed to the workforce, smoke-free environment, computer access to e-health resources, maybe kiosks that allow them to access some of the websites or e-health portal resources, a health unit access, the ability to have quiet space, training facilities that are identified for use by wellness pursuits or in wellness pursuits, managers participating in that environment. So they're actually seeing visible managerial involvement in the program and visible messaging that comes periodically. So these would be some of the major environmental issues, physical issues that we would expect to see in a work site that is in fact really trying to create that culture of wellness. Now, the policy and benefit support come in a lot of different areas, one of which is there a separate wellness policy as a formal organizational value? Is it included in a mission statement which currently reflects the current kind of identity of the organization? Or in a vision statement, which is usually an estimate of what and a desired future state. So I want to know, does wellness show up in a formal way in the organization's policies and their vision and mission? Is there an employee orientation that includes a discussion of wellness? Is there release or flex time for exercise? Is that something that the company feels strongly enough about to encourage people to exercise during the workday? Are there incentive rewards of any type, of material goods or any kind of special privilege that goes along with the wellness activities that supports it as an incentive? Are there HR and benefit policies that are aligned with wellness? And do those benefit policies actually support the individual's role in initiating and maintaining wellness activities? And is there wellness recognition? Is there anything that is done to show and identify people that have had significant accomplishments in wellness, sustained weight loss, quitting smoking, becoming more physically active, participating in 5K runs, whatever it is, but a recognition process. Also, do the medical benefit coverages for the population, do they include a preventive medical benefit provision? And how well designed is that? How rich is that? In addition, do they use consumer-directed or consumer-driven health plans with high deductibles and personal health care accounts and 100% paid preventive medical benefit? So those are all the different aspects of that consumer-driven health plan and the use of that to support and align with wellness purposes. Does wellness get addressed in performance appraisals and performance evaluation? Is there a financial wellness orientation covering the financial wellness domain? So in addition to physical wellness or mental wellness, social wellness, do we in fact include a financial wellness component? And are there financial incentives for wellness? Does someone pay less for their health plan coverage if they're actively involved in pursuing their own wellness level? So these are some of the key policy and benefits support issues that again contribute to the creation of that wellness-oriented work culture. Now, the fourth leg of the table is the communication support, and it involves at least 3 vehicles, communication vehicles that can be used to message about wellness program activities. In addition, is there consistent wellness messaging? So we talk about that in other parts of the program. There's also a CE module on engagement and communication strategies, which include a series of messages which need to be repeated with populations, with work populations. And is there regular messaging? Is there a mechanism for messaging people about wellness that allows them to hear those messages on a regular basis? Also, is it recognition oriented? Are the communications recognizing achievement or identifying team performance or issues which really come into play in terms of recognition? Does the communications activity that's provided to employees under that AMSO construct, the awareness element in the A in AMSO, is that operating in a way that's personalized? Is there some personal identification of information, readiness, preferences that gets used and integrated into follow-up activities? And does your communication support activity provide offers to individuals? So if they are you're thinking about a particular kind of behavior change, does your program proactively give them offers that they have an opportunity to accept to move them forward? Are messages timely around wellness? Are they given at a time that makes sense given the activities going on and people's knowing about them? Are there helpful reminders that are also provided to people if they sign up for something and they plan to attend? Is there a way of being able to help them remember about the activity that's coming up? And are there ways to solicit their evaluations to maybe rate the program on a 4-star, 5-star, 4-star, 3-star basis? Is information posted that allows feedback to be seen by employees from other employees about the wellness program? Is there a way for that to happen? And finally, is there a way for results to be summarized and to be fed back to the individuals in the population that really help them understand the scope or the magnitude or the breadth or the amount of activity that the wellness program is providing? So these would be what I would consider to be some of the major issues in the communication support area as one of those four, legs of the table that help us create a wellness-oriented work culture. Now, there also are culturally powerful leadership issues. So some people have a much more adept understanding of how to affect a work culture, but the culturally powerful leadership tends to have a unified voice of senior management. So there's a unified voice among senior managers about wellness. There's clear and periodic statements of support. Those are pronouncements. Explanation of relevance to the organization so that people understand the reasoning behind a wellness program. Visible and active involvement of all levels of managers. Understandable and reasonable vision for change, regular repetition of an aspirational goal. So we may have, say, take the statement that was provided earlier about a healthy work culture. That's an aspirational goal. So our ability to kind of tap into people's desire to see improvement and to see something brought about that has greater value. And then finally, a continuity of the position on wellness in cultural norms. Now, cultural norms are the ways that we perceive what others in our work culture think about us doing wellness. So it influences me. If I think that people are going to think it's uncool for me to do wellness things, I'm probably not going to do very many wellness things. But if I perceive that they think it's cool to exercise during the day or stretch and get up and stretch in meetings, and stand against the wall, I'm going to do that more often. So there's the continuity of position on those cultural norms that many managers that are more adept at cultural activity and creating a culture of wellness are in fact able to do. Now, there's also a support for cultural alignment, and cultural alignment is what we call the way in which various activities within the worksite actually line up and are culturally aligned around the issue of wellness. So what I've found in working with more than 1,000 employers over the years is that many employers have a lot of silos, just like you see the silos on the screen. Those silos oftentimes tend to operate in their own sphere. They don't necessarily support each other or work together well. And then if you want them to work together well, and if you want them to support wellness in a consistent way, in an aligned way, we generally have to take up and do some of the management strategies you see across the top of the slide. So if we put everybody into the same unified administrative structure so that these issues can be controlled and dealt with, that's one strategy. Regular staff planning meetings where you're planning out how all the various activities are going to work together, that's another strategy. periodic function and operational review to see how well you're working with each other around the support for various things like wellness. That would be another kind of management strategy. Another strategy would say there's some integration points, and maybe it's scheduling in terms of remote site educational activity. Maybe it has to do with IT and their role in terms of bringing some integration between various groups that are using a common information technology platform. So there are some prospective integration points, and we have continuing education modules that go deeper into all of these. And then integration focused review is where we're asking the question periodically, how well are these various groups, these silos, if you will, how well are they connecting with each other in supporting our wellness objectives or our wellness vision or our wellness culture within our organization? So the integration issues here that you see labeled in the middle of the graphic in the slide, level 1 integration means do the various wellness interventions speak and connect well with each other. So when someone's getting a summary of a well-being assessment back, does that in fact have some links that can actively and easily be pursued to an eHealth portal? And is there a coaching process that helps me connect my goal? And is someone asking and helping me formulate a goal? And is that then connected to an incentive program? So the issues around level 1 integration have to do with how well do the individual wellness program activities actually align with each other and support each other. Level 2 is when the wellness piece, which you see off on the right-hand side, the second one in on the right, how well does that connect with all these other activities and silos? Level 3 is how well does the wellness program actually connect with external resources, local hospital programs, local vendors, maybe there's a sleep clinic, or maybe there's activity that people want to engage in that have to do with depression and or handling anxiety. How well do they find their way there? How does the program help them connect with those external resources? So this particular graphic is, I think, a very helpful graphic because it helps us understand the organizational complexity. The larger the organization, the more likely these silos will be separate silos. They won't be headed up by the same person, and they won't be essentially connected organizationally. So this is where our support for cultural alignment comes into play. And the more that we can bring these silos in large organizations, particularly into alignment, the more powerful our culture is at guiding and influencing behavior on the part of employees and their family members. Now we have some key tools for wellness and for well-being, and these include a strong senior management support, clear vision for what that wellness and well-being looks like for our organization, an annual process we're going through where we develop a program strategy or a program proposal, and that proposal then gets implemented. The ability for that process owner to be identified, so we have someone who's responsible for managing it, for developing it, for managing it, for implementing it, for evaluating it. Credible set of metrics that go along with our culture and with our approach to wellness. A sound program infrastructure, that means both organizational infrastructure and technology infrastructure. A compatible program design, so we've got a design that's appropriate to our vision and our goals. We have some mechanisms for local input, so we have ways, particularly for a large organization, for those remote sites to have some of their own sense of ownership over parts of the wellness program because they can shape those at the local level. We have some long-term integration strategy things we're doing to kind of bring wellness into the organization and have it thrive over time. So these are some of the key tools that have to do with wellness and well-being for work organizations. And the last one is perseverance, which is very important. And our ability to create wellness-oriented work cultures has a lot to do with our level of perseverance. We can't just do this for a short period of time and then stop doing it. It really needs to be continued over time, and there needs to be people who feel that sense of perseverance that they want to stay with it long enough to see change actually take place. Now, a summary of key points for this module. Work organizations have to understand the short and long-term value proposition for wellness. Culture change in work organizations need highly placed champions and supporters. So anytime you're going to change a work culture, it usually is going to take somebody that's got some power, that's got some ability to influence that culture, that organization. Creating culture takes time, so we need to have the long view here. There are leadership, environmental, policy, and benefits and communication elements to creating a culture of wellness and well-being. And employees and spouses need to see, hear, and experience wellness. It can't be something that is remote to them. It needs to be something they're involved in, actively engaged in. A long-term orientation is critical to success, so that's where our perseverance has to come into play. Wellness needs to be highly integrated into the organization and strongly institutionalized. The more that we can institutionalize our wellness activities, usually the more and longer the effects of the program are. There are measurable methods to evaluate perceptions of wellness norms. So I would recommend that you go to healthycultures.com. That's an organization run by Judd Allen that has done a lot in being able to evaluate norms. That whole approach is called normative systems change, and it allows us to have options and alternatives about how explicit, how formal we are in our approach to wellness. And significant periodic management actions combined with small, continuous, incremental change is probably the best long-term strategy for creating a culture of wellness. So these are a summary of our key points from this particular CE module. Now, let's look at some key questions. First of all, why is culture so important? And first of all, culture and organizational culture has an enormously powerful effect on behavior. And it oftentimes accomplishes that through norms which govern my perceptions of what others think about specific types of behavior. So those are called cultural norms. In addition, we need to have the long-term behavioral change capability for wellness to actually benefit a group over time. So that is where our culture has to have that continuity. It has to have that long-term behavioral change capability. So culture is important because it is an extremely powerful source of behavioral effect in working organizations. The second question is, how should work culture be created? And I believe that work culture should be intentionally created. It should be incrementally created, and it will likely be created through leadership, environment, policies, benefits, and communications. Those are the four legs to the table of cultural change. Question number 3 is, how can formal rather than informal culture creation strategies be used? And most of our cultural creation is informal. We're not actively, formally changing the culture. We are essentially doing different things which add up and sum to our perception of how we do things around here, which is another way of thinking about culture. It's what we think about in the way that we do things. So if we want to have a faster impact on culture, sometimes we can use the kinds of skills and insights that Judd Allen and others that have done cultural related wellness programs have come up with to actually explicitly work on culture. Rather than have it be an implicit outcome of our programming, we can in fact make it an explicit formal part of our programming. So that's an option in terms of how we might use that particular approach. And that normative systems change is actually a formalized process that you can go through with a group of people to look at your culture, look at the norms that govern various wellness issues, and then work on changing those norms through both implicit and explicit strategies. So there's definitely the opportunity for you to work more quickly and more efficiently on culture than just waiting for the culture to develop out of a series of actions and activities, many of which we have covered in this particular module. Now that you've completed this particular module, go ahead and take the quiz.